So right now, what I am doing is I am tracing this duct tape pattern that I have right over on the fabric I'm using. Now, I made a couple mistakes here, as in I used the wrong side of the fabric and then I traced the pattern wrong. When I made the pattern, I also made the mistake of not leaving enough room for the stitching. So the first part of this that I did actually ended up being too small. So if you're gonna do this, then you need to leave room for the stitching. This was my first time sewing, so I kind of didn't really know that at the time. And now what I'm also using is this like Sharpie pen. It's a Bic, but if I use a Sharpie on the fabric that I have right now, there's a very high chance that it might bleed through and show through on the other side. So I'm trying to use light strokes here to trace over the pattern that I made. And I'm tracing over it as close to the pattern as I can right now. And then after I am done with that, I'll show you, I'm going to make sure that I have enough room for the stitching, and I'll use a ruler for that. So on a fabric that I'm using right now, it has a texture. It's a bit of a furry texture, but not by much. And this one also has, I accidentally moved it, but this one also has two different sides. One is a bit fuzzier than the other. I'm using the less fuzzy one, so make sure you're also on the right side whenever you're doing this. So make sure you also try and keep this down. I'm using this stencil, like this is, I flipped it on the other side whenever I wanted to do it on the other side, but since my piece is symmetrical, this should be alright for both sides. Now, I'm trying to, like I said, I'm trying to trace as close to the to the pattern as I can, and I'm using small strokes because I really just need the outline of this. And then when you're done with this, I'll show you how much space I leave, and some of the places might be a bit difficult to get to because the space that I need to leave might be a bit tight, so I end up leaving more space than I have to. In case I need to cut some off, it's always best to have more space than not enough space. Also, the eye part of this was a bit off, so I didn't actually do that just yet, but this is the basic outline I have of it. As long as it's, you know, like visible enough to you, this is what it looks like for me. You might not even see it too well, but that's the general outline that I have. And then if I can find my ruler, I'm using a ruler right here. I have inches and centimeters. I kind of tried to leave about half an inch, but half an inch might even be a bit too much. But that's on the off chance that I see that I might mess up, so I'm kind of leaving that room for error. But ideally, you can also leave a 1/4 of an inch. That's also a pretty good amount, but I left half an inch. So I place this down next to any one of the lines, and I measure about half an inch, and then I mark it off very, very lightly. And then I just go around the entire part of it, leaving markings. So basically I can connect these later on. So you can do that among all the kind of the annoying parts. Like if you have like just one flat area, one straight line, you really only need to mark it off once to connect everything, and it doesn't have to be perfect at all. Obviously you have to be within, you know, the kind of the vicinity of your shape, but as long as you're following the general shape, the general outline, you'll be okay. So right here down on the mouth, I want to be able to mark off one over there, and then right over here I'll mark off another one. Where the mouth curves inward, I'm gonna mark off one more. I'm just using very, very light markings. Even though these are gonna be stitched and you're not gonna see it, but just making sure that they stay light because I am working with a white fabric. And then I have this. Now here in this little area right here, I'm running into a part where this piece is supposed to curve inward, but if I did not leave enough space for that, it might not have enough space to curve inward, and that's where I'm gonna actually try and I'm not actually gonna cut into that shape. I'm gonna make sure that I mark off this. So what's gonna happen between these two is when I go here, I'm gonna line that, and then I'm gonna make like an angle and just keep going down that way, because it's always better to leave more space than not enough space. touching by the corners is also a really good idea if you don't really know where to bend the piece of fabric that you have. So this is basically what I learned from one day of mistake. Granted, some would say that day is a waste of time, but I feel like through that trial and error, I at least learned something through it. So any day where you feel like you may have messed up and you have to redo it, it's always like a trial and error phase. So in the future, you can always make your projects a lot better. So I'm almost done going around it. It really just you space the dots as far, dots or dashes, whatever you're using. You're spacing it whatever is most comfortable for you and whatever you feel you can connect to easiest. So then I take this, follow the general shape, and go here, following the general shape. And if it's not perfect, that's fine. This is just making sure you leave enough room for the stitching. You reach the curvature over here, you make the angle, keep going downward, and it really just has to be light enough for you to see it to cut and follow this guideline. And alternatively, if you think you can follow the dot guideline with your scissors without having the solid lines, then you can do that as well. So you reach the angle here, and then here this thing curves, so you kind of want to take this like that. This also curves here, you take it down like that, and then you connect the dot over here. This curves, so you do that. This also curves. So basically, once you set just these few dots, you should be able to easily, you know, follow the general shape of your pattern, and there. Now, the only thing this is missing right now, I'm sorry if you can see too well, is the eye, and I'm gonna wait to do that because once I sew everything in, there might be some extra space. If I have to cut down the fabric, I will. But in order to try and do that, you just use pins kind of to eyeball where you want to sew it before you actually sew it, because once you sew with your machine, it's kind of locked in. So I'm going to keep you guys updated. I'm sorry if you really didn't see this well, but I tried to explain it as best as I could. So I ended up sewing everything up just fine, and there's enough space for me to end up tucking this part in. I actually pinned it down right now because I'm gonna actually glue it up in a bit, but I wanted it to stay down for the purposes of this. I also sewed together the mouth, so the transition here, except for this little, you know, black piece of marker. I kind of don't like that, but I can't really do much about it now, except maybe if I wanted to, I could sew it inward more. But other than that, the transition between the mouthpiece is actually pretty good, and I like how it came out. And then you could still see that part of the beak here actually still shows, which I really like. And I didn't get to actually do the eye here yet either. So as you can see, I did it on this side and it didn't do it on the other side. Doesn't really matter how nice and clean I do it, because in the end, I'm gonna end up putting on this part of it anyway. So other than that, I mean, the head is looking like it's almost done. I just need to work on the eyepiece, and then I haven't really decided down here what's gonna happen, but I think I'll figure that out once I make the body. So hopefully you guys enjoy this, and as always, you can always leave a like, and I'll continue to have updates for you guys.